Thank you. Thank you, James, for that very generous introduction. As James mentioned, I had a small role to play with the UWCSEA, and as you know, I helped to plan and build the campus, East Campus, that you enjoy. But let me tell you a true story about the campus. About 3 or 4 years ago, I went there for an event, and I brought along my youngest son, Jamat, who also graduated from UWCSEA. And as we walk into the school, he sees the library, and he says, Kishore Mahbubani Library. He looks very puzzled, and he says to me, Dad, you're not dead yet. How can they name a library after you? But I'm glad to be alive. Anyway, I'm very happy to be here to share this very special occasion with you. And I'm going to try in about 10 minutes or so to talk about the times that we live in, and just to give you maybe one small farewell piece of advice which I hope will be helpful for you. But to describe our times, ironically, the best description of our times was actually written by Charles Dickens, I think about 150 years ago, in A Tale of Two Cities. And he says, this is what he said: "It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way." What's amazing is that he wrote that 150 years ago, and it is the best description of our times. So first of all, let me explain to you why we live in the best of times. And by the way, statistically speaking, the global human condition has never been better. Never, ever in human history have the times been as good as we have today. So let me give you a few statistics. In 2000, when I was then Singapore's ambassador to the UN, the then UN Secretary General Kofi Annan announced some very ambitious Millennium Development Goals, MDGs. Now, most of the MDGs were so ambitious that they were not met. But one of the most ambitious MDG was to halve global poverty by 2015. And guess what? 2 years ago, we didn't just meet that goal, we exceeded that goal. And even a conservative body like the US National Intelligence Council has predicted that by 2030, mass extreme poverty would be virtually eliminated. And that's a very different planet when poverty disappears. And let me give you just another statistic about poverty and about the changes that has happened in my lifetime. In 1950, 3/4 of the world were living in extreme poverty. In 1981, it was still 44%. Now it's below 10%. That's a remarkable transformation. The world's infant mortality rate, an infant mortality rate is so important because it's the best indicator of the times that we live in, because babies are the most vulnerable citizens on our planet, and when babies die, something is going wrong. And the infant mortality rate has fallen from 63 deaths per 1,000 live births in 1990 to 32 in 2015. At the same time, in the same period, the global maternal mortality ratio declined by 44% from 385 deaths per 100,000 to 216 deaths. Global literacy rates have also increased. In 1950, only 36% of the world's population was literate. In 2014, this number had increased to 85%. And just let me give you one last statistic. In 1988, polio was rampant in 125 countries. Today, that number is down to 2. So you can see, from the point of view of a human being living on planet Earth, these are the best of times. But as you know, these are also the worst of times. And how are they the worst of times? If you just, for those of you, and many of you do, of course, if you travel to Europe, if you travel to America, you find the populations that are amazingly pessimistic about the future. And as you know, it was during your time in school that we saw this amazing event where the country with the world's best universities, the world's best think tanks, the world's best newspapers decides to elect Donald Trump as president. That's actually quite amazing. And if you look at the values of the United World College movement, about being open to the world, about being sensitive to other cultures, about constantly learning, every value that the United World College movement stands for is every value that Donald Trump denies. And he has become the president. And as you know, even in Europe, you had this stunning development which no one expected, also happened while you were in school, when everyone thought that the sensible decision would be for the United Kingdom to remain a member of the European Union, and the British people chose Brexit. And I can tell you, by the way, they say that, sometimes you can see tragedy coming. I can actually see tragedy coming when the British negotiate Brexit, because even though nobody wants to see a head-on collision happen, the head-on collision is going to happen in 2 years' time. The European Union cannot allow a soft exit for the United Kingdom, because if it allows a soft exit, it opens the doors for others to leave the European Union. So they have to create a very hard option for the exit of the United Kingdom. And the British cannot accept a hard Brexit. So you can see, you can watch it live. You can see this collision coming, and it's going to happen. That's why it's the worst of times. And at the same time, at a time when our number one concern is about the fact that the biggest thing that is happening in our lifetime is climate change, Donald Trump has just cut funding for all research on climate change. So this, therefore, is my final piece of advice for all of you. By my rough guess, you're all about 17, 18 years old. I hope that one of you will become like Macron in France and become president of France or president of your country at the age of 39, 22 years from now. And when you reach that position, I want you to just walk into that position with one simple image to understand how our world has changed. And this image is what I call the boat metaphor. As you know, 7 billion people live in 193 separate countries. In the past, when 7 billion people live in 193 separate countries, it was as though they were living in 193 separate boats with captains and crews taking care of each boat and rules to make sure that the boats didn't collide. That's what they call the post-World War II order. But today, as a result of the world having shrunk and become so small and so interdependent, the 7 billion people no longer live in 193 separate boats. They live in 193 separate cabins on the same global boat. But the problem with our global boat is that you have captains and crews taking care of each cabin, but no captain or crew taking care of the global boat as a whole. And I can tell you that once you absorb this metaphor, you understand why we have so many global crises, from climate change to global financial crisis, from pandemics to global terrorism. All these are happening because we have no captain or crew to take care of the global boat that we have. And this is why it's very important for graduates of the United World College to try to strive to achieve global leadership positions. Because while you are in college, as you look around this room, you accept the different nationalities, you accept the different costumes effortlessly, and you know that at the end of the day, we live on one small planet, planet Earth. And if we screw up planet Earth, we don't have planet B to go to. So I hope that after you leave the school and as you progress in your life, you will always remember the values of the United World College, take them with you, and when you achieve positions of power, please take care of planet Earth. And with that, let me offer you my warmest congratulations. Thank you.
On behalf of everyone, I would like to say a huge thank you to Mr. Kishore Mahbubani. May we have another round of applause, please? Mr. Mahbubani, it is a huge honor and privilege to have you here at our graduation ceremony today. And what resonated with me the most from your speech was that through the best of times and through the worst of times, it is the values that we have gained on our journey at UWC that will determine how we respond and, at the end of the day, define who we are as people. And as a token of our appreciation, I would like to please present these flowers to you. Thank you once again.